getting things in the right place, that must be the most common question I get asked all the time. Now, when I started doing this, there are lots of ways to do this, by the way. I mean, you can pick and choose what suits, basically. But I just wanted something that fit within my particular approach, which was this responsive, zero expectations, doing it for the joy kind of thing. I didn't want it to be hard work, didn't want it to be complicated. So initially I started using something called ticking in, which is something that I used when I was illustrating years and years ago, which resulted in this kind of thing, which was, we just sort of ticked in, and you can see that it's all, so that's probably 35, 40 years ago. And you can see how illustrative it looks, and it's, it hasn't got the kind of life that I'm wanting in what I do now, what I did when I returned to drawing. So I needed something that was simple. And when people ask me all the time, but I used to say it was ticking in that I used, and it was difficult to explain. So consequently, I thought, well, what's an easier way to explain what I'm doing? Which was looking for, initially, I'm just looking for points, anchors as people refer to them. So I'm looking for points on a face. So on this face, which I'm going to draw in a minute, for instance, I'm looking for points, these specific points that I'm looking for. And I wanted a way of testing to see whether or not my visual comparison, because that's basically what it is, and my observational accuracy, they're both one and the same really. I wanted to see how good that was, or how accurate that was, and consequently know that when I make these visual assessments, these comparisons, that they would be accurate. So what I did was for people to who asked me, and people and students that asked me, I said, well, let's just check what your visual accuracy is. So I asked them to draw. Now this is kind of size for size in terms of the dots, but it doesn't have to be. I'll show you why. But I asked them to draw 3 dots, not just 2 dots, because we need that sort of denoter in the middle. It can't just be 2 points, because you'll just lose it. It needs something that's going to give you a visual comparison, a more accurate visual comparison between. It could be 4 dots, but it gets complicated. But if you look at just 3 dots, and we draw 3 random dots in random positions on a piece of paper, it should be further up to the top, but it's near enough. And then, but they have to be randomly spaced. They can't be evenly spaced, otherwise it gets a bit too easy. So you basically put 3 marks on a piece of paper, and then you're going to try and replicate those marks in terms of their position and distance on the so this is where this is your your reference, if you like, and this is where you're going to work. So if that's in the same place, then this is going to have the same effect when you flip to your reference. When you flip to drawing that, then you're going to have the same kind of relationship. So then you draw the dots. I'll do them up in the corner there, because I'm going to draw on this as well. So you then make the marks that you see, right? Now we're talking between that one, we're talking between that one, and we're talking between that one. So there are three measurements that you're making. So the ultimate one is that one, to get those the right width, and then obviously the ones in between. So once you've done that and you've put the marks on there, take the paper off the. Remember, this is just a test to see how accurate you are. Take the paper off and compare it to the lines the dots that you've made. In this case, they're exactly the same. So if for instance this was to be, I mean, you wouldn't do dots, but if you wanted to check how well you can enlarge something, we won't work with reversing it, maybe with making it smaller. But if you wanted to check how making something larger, then you could move the paper away from it, if you know what I mean. So you can move it away. In fact, that would make it smaller by moving it further away. So moving it closer and further away is just about the relationships of those dots, But in terms of size for size, they're exactly the same. So that's a way of checking your visual accuracy, your comparative accuracy. And you can then apply that to the drawing. So in terms of this drawing, you can look for points or dots, as you want to call, if you want to call them that. These are the dots or the points that you're going to use to anchor everything to. So if we said that the face is going to be kind of like there, and then we're going to look for 3 dots, which would be one eye, the other eye, which is about there, and then the top of his ear. Doesn't really matter whether or not it's up or down, or if it's a horizontal, it's on the horizontal, because it's just where it is. It's not a case of dropping it down to make sure you get top, because you can do that when you start to draw it. This is just kind of a simple planning stage. So let's just go for that eye, and then to that eye, and then to the top of his ear, which is quite far out. It's about there. So you've got 3 dots, right, or 3 points. The same then you can apply to the top of his hairline, for instance. So I can look for a dot there or a point there, and then we can look for where his nose is in relation to that. So that's just that distance we're looking at. Don't look at anything else. It's just that distance. And then from the top of that, from the tip of his nose to his chin is the next distance. So it's there. So now you've got 3 things. Now it doesn't have to be. The thing is with this is that it's not dependent on the angle of the face. So it works whether the face is facing you, or whether it's that kind of thing, where you're looking across, straight on the face, or whether you're looking at an angle. It's not really dependent at all on the it's the particular position or the division or the geometry of the head. It's not really dependent on that. This applies to everything. No matter if you're drawing a human face or a dog face or a cat face or whatever. I don't think dogs or cats have faces. They do have faces, don't they? but you know what I mean. It can be applied to anything. It can be applied to a still life. And whether or not it, how it, you can see it kind of in this was a lesson from the other night. You can see where there are 4 dots in that case that have come across there, and then 1, 2, 3 dots across the face. So how you find those dots, by the way, is up to you. Now you can do this. You can actually literally put dots on the face. Or you can do what I normally do, and you'll see me do it in the demos, is I just sort of scribble my way around. Now this is not scribble drawing as people think of it. This is, people call it scribble drawing when they see me doing it, and it's not. What I'm doing is I'm investigating the face. I'm kind of working so, and I use this analogy, and I don't mean any disrespect, but it's like when a blind person feels around a face to find out where the features are. And this is what this is. It may look like scribbling, but it's not. It's just me finding the points. So I find them by scribbling. That's how I do it. And as I say, it looks like scribbling, but it's actually not. So as I get all these points in place, then I can then start to, so I build the shapes around the place, so the shapes around the dots or the points. So as I'm wandering around the face and trying to find where these things should be, and making, this is another point, I won't kind of talk about this too much, but you'll see people do gestural drawings. Now I figured this out when I was like 14 or 15 when I did technical illustration. And when people draw, and you'll see a lot in gestural drawings, that when they get to a point where, and this is why the scribble thing's quite relevant, when they get to a point where they're sure of something existing, it may be a knuckle on a finger, or it may be an elbow, or it may be a knee or something, they will make a significant mark, and then they'll meander on to something else. And then you'll see that with a lot of the gestural type drawing. They don't explain that that's what they're doing, but I'd kind of figured it out when I was looking at illustrators back in the day, in the 70s, and how they were doing it, and why was it that all of a sudden the faces started to look like faces because they target specific elements. Now these, as I said, these can be the dots, and they target those specific elements, and all of a sudden it becomes visible, more visible. The reason for that is that the eye completes the picture. The eye fills the dots in. We're kind of programmed to join the dots, and that's exactly what these gestural type artists do. And it basically, it's a technique. I don't know whether some know they're doing it, but it's a technique, and it's not particularly difficult to do. But as I said, if you focus on the points, the dots. Now, the dots aren't fully committed locations. They're simply in the vicinity of. It's your job then to work with those dots as a kind of starting point. Now, one of the things, and you'll see this a lot, and I saw somebody drawing eyes the other day, and they try to engineer from this point. Now, because they'll talk about, and this is the problem, knowledge is the problem, and they'll know that this eye should do this and the brow should do that and all the rest of it, and the under lid should do this, and they'll know all that stuff. But the problem with that is the knowing, because everything is different, every face will be different, and this eye, and you'll look at any great portrait artist, they don't succumb to the engineering. They'll make a mark. Sargent will do it, where it's just a mark. They'll just make and then it'll, for whatever reason, he'll either do it with a brush and it looks a little bit lighter, or he'll go back and then take it out with his finger or something else, or a bit of tissue or something, or a bit of rag. They're not engineering. These are marks that are accurately placed, and I refer to this as accuracy, efficiency, and economy. So how accurate those marks are, how efficient they are at transmitting the thing, the shape, and the economy is simply a case of how fewer marks are used to describe that thing. But what happens within a shape? So that shape there. So let's say we're looking at this shape of this eye. Regardless of it's just a bunch of shapes and tone. It's not an eye. It's a bunch of shape and tone. So don't get bogged down with the complications of what an eye is. But it's just a shape and tone, as I said. And what happens when you draw anything, but let's just focus on this bit, is that you've got the central, you found the dots, you found the position, the location of everything in relation to everything. Well, almost, because it's going to evolve. But what happens with something like this is that your eye should be doing that and that and that and that and that and that and that. It's when we do the classes, when we talk about drawing hats, it's the distance from wherever the hat or the rim hits the head to the rim itself that you're looking at all the time. So your eye is constantly looking at. It's almost like a radiating lines from, but your eyes should be doing that. Your eyes should be constantly looking to see where, the distance. So we start to say, right, we're happy with the eye as it is at the moment. Let's just put a few darker marks to confirm that we're happy with it. Let's just make it a little bit more accurate, and you can see it starts to look like an eye. As soon as we do that, we need to be doing this. The eye needs to be doing, how far from the top of that brow or the top of that lid is the brow, is the corner of the brow. What's happening there? How far is that distance? We're not doing any tonal application at the moment. We're just looking for the locations of things. So the same thing that allowed you to do dot, dot, and dot, 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 the same thing, the same visual accuracy is what you're using to do it on a more local level, local to the actual shape of the thing that you're trying to draw, whether it's the mouth, the eye, the mouth, the ear, whatever. That also applies to everything else. So once you've got shapes in, and these at this stage should be fairly loose shapes. Once you've got these loose shapes in, you should be doing the same thing with everything else. So the distance from the top of his brow there to the where that his hair is, there should be a measurement there, or a visual comparison there. That's what you should be doing all the time. You should be doing that all the time. And that's what the visual comparison things are about. It's not really about any kind of measurement or geometry. It's more about being able to see with accuracy. So the same thing that did that, right, can do that, and can do that, and can do that, and can do. So you're looking at the site. So somebody would go and look at this, and we'll draw this like this, and we'll look at the way the eye does that, and then we'll do that like that, and we'll follow that down there. Somebody with great practice and skill could do that. But what you need to be doing is basically looking at that distance there. That's what's interesting us. How far is the cheek from the nose? I mean, I know we're going to looking at, well, there's an incline there. How do we define the incline? We define the incline in the same way as everything else, by comparison. So we define that the point of his nose is there. How far is it from the under lid? How far is that? What's that distance there? So all the time, the same thing that did that is doing that. So the same thing is doing 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, and if you then take it in terms of alignments, we're talking about mostly we're talking about the alignment of the paper, the alignment of the edge of the paper. So you'll see people talk about this, about the only constants we really have is the edges of the paper. So it's going to be this side here that gives an indication of where true is. So if that's straight, how far off straight is that? Although I wouldn't advise that. I think in terms of the actual relationship to other objects. So as you progressively go through, so you go through the eyes and you start to build up the eyes, and the eyes are starting to look like what they should be. They then become the next stage. They become the foundations for the next stage. So everything builds on everything, but it's always about these comparative measurements, this visual comparison. So it all boils down to that. I mean, it could be 4 dots if you want to make it complicated. It doesn't have to be 3 dots. It can be any amount of dots. But obviously, the more you have, the more complicated it becomes. And some people have said, when I've done this, it's triangulation. It's not triangulation, obviously. It's a triangle. But this is just simply about being able to accurately see the position of things. And obviously then transferring that accuracy into other aspects of the process, all of which it revolves around this constantly looking. So you get into the habit of, when you scan the reference, you get into the habit of doing that. So all the time as you're scanning, I'm not just looking at the position of where the eye is, I'm looking at the position of where the corner of his eye socket is in relation to the eye. So I'm looking at that all the time. And as you get more and more into the drawing, you'll be looking at bigger things, the more global aspects of drawing this face. You'll be looking at the relationships of, well, the side of his mouth, for instance. You'll be looking at the corner of his mouth in relation to that kind of thing. I mean, obviously these are the sort of anatomical constants. The sort of the corner of the mouth in relation to the eye. It's not always exactly at the edge of it, but there is a relationship between the eye and the corner of the mouth. So you're always going to be coming across those things. That you don't need to know those things or study those things. It's just one of those, you'll see it when you're doing it. You can say, oh, well, I can see where those things are now aligning properly. But what I prefer to do is that rather than this, which is a bit too committed early on kind of thing, because that's another thing about the dot thing. It's not meant to be 100% accurate straight away. When you're aiming for accuracy straight away, it's a different kind of drawing. And I think that there are methods to do that, whether it's tracing or whether it's some kind of geometry. I think that's where you'd go if accuracy straight off is what you're after. But if it's more of an evolution of drawing, and some might call it sketching in a way, but it's not. But if it's more that kind of approach, something that will give you a bit more life in it, then I would say that shapes are your first port. So after you've identified the location of the things, the shape of the areas around the dots is your main concern. It's not really a we're going to have some definite marks in place, and then we're going to, work out from that. As I said, it's a different criteria that, and a different way of working. But for me, I needed something fairly simple, fairly quick, and something that, to be honest, improved my observational accuracy, so that I could paint better, that I could see colour better, all those sort of things. It's the same thing. It's just training your eye to see better. So that's the reason why I like to use the dots, because I could do that. This is hazelwood charcoal, by the way, and it's extremely soft. Sometimes that's what it looks like. Sometimes it can be quite hard and graphite-like, but it depends how it bakes. So it comes out like this kind of stuff, and it's still got the bark on it. You also get curly ones as well, which is, I quite like the challenge of working with something like that. But as you can see, it is very soft, so it's not hard to make marks, and it's not hard to allow the thing to meander. This is the thing about the scribble thing, is that you've just seen me doing a bit of an alignment sort of thing there. The beauty of the scribble is the meandering thing, but if you haven't got the tools to allow you to meander and to scribble, and you have to really penetrate the paper, it makes it a lot harder just to let the thing flow. Because one of the things about your about the drawing, like this guy, one of the things about that is that you have to have the essence, the emotional response embedded within the early marks. It's what it's about. It's really, and if the marks have to be almost engraved into the paper, then it takes away that sort of fluidity, that spontaneity. It takes away that. So you end up with something that's a little bit contrived and a lot harder to do, to be fair. It's one of those things. I'm not a big fan of depending on equipment, but sometimes it will get in the way. I think that's probably the most important thing for me, not to let the equipment, the tools, get in the way of what I'm trying to do. So if I can just allow the charcoal just to sort of make meandering marks across the, simple meandering marks across the paper without any effort, then that suits me, because it just means that it can be, as you can see, it just flows a lot better, and it's just more conducive, I suppose, to the scribble. But as I said, this is not about scribbling. This is about exploring the face. And it just so happens that it looks like a scribble, but it's not scribbling. It's not scribble drawing or scribble painting or anything like that. And I talk about in one of the courses, I talk about scribbling, the importance of scribbling, and how the idea of scribbling is the important bit. It's not the doing of the scribble, it's the idea of scribbling, because the idea of scribbling is the bit that informs the brain not to get involved. Because one of the things is that the brain gets involved, tells you what a nose should look like. Another reason why you should never talk about noses, and I'll do another video on that in a minute, but or not necessarily in a minute, but in a few days. But as I said, the brain thinks that if it's a scribble, it's not important, so it'll let you get away with an awful lot more because it's a scribble, because it doesn't matter. So you can just do, when you get to this bit, I'm not going to really bother about that tone on there, so I'm just going to put a scribble on there, put a bit of tone. If I told the brain that it's not scribbling, that it's going to be a fine, finished work of art, then I'd be like making sure that this tone is exactly right. And that's not really what you want. You can make it right later. You can go and then, once you've got past this stage, you can then make it right. You can then put work into making it. Sorry, I keep putting it wrong. You can then put work into making it smooth and making it blended properly. But at this stage, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be doing that. You may not even want to get to the finish stage. You may just want to do a sort of a, you know, like the guy that we did in the lesson last night. You may want to just do that. The one thing about this observational accuracy approach is that it focuses on what's important. Just as the eye, the position of the eye is the primary focus on here. It focuses on what makes this face work, and that's one of the most important things, is that you got to know what's important in a face, because that's the bit that you need to draw. The rest of it is just window dressing. It's just a supporting role, excuse me, but that's basically what you need to do. So if you've got to this point where you can see with accuracy, and then you can start then to sort of build around that accuracy using the same skills. It's a more connected and more relatable progress or process, because you kind of, you can see it evolve. This is the thing about drawings. They tend to evolve. They don't just happen and it's all about the finish. It's more than just that. You've got to let the thing evolve and develop, and I say it loads of times. You'll hear me on the videos talking about a conversation. It really is a conversation with a face, or a conversation with another human. And the more you talk to that human, the more you get to know that human, the better the portrait. And it's as simple as that. It's nothing complicated, this, at all. There's nothing difficult to understand. There is lots of difficulty if you wedded to other, more traditional methods, because you spent a long time using those methods, and it's difficult to break the habit of using those methods. But if you're new to this, then this is from my point of view, a much easier way to get into doing portraits, and in fact get into drawing anything, because you can draw anything with this approach. It's not limited to portraits. It's just that with a portrait, getting things in the right place is probably the most important thing to a portrait. It's not always. I mean, you've got to look at sort of Modigliani or any of or the portraits done by Van Gogh. You can see that anatomical accuracy is not always an important part of doing this. You can create portraits that don't have anatomical accuracy, but they have the essence. A lot of people don't understand that, and I get that. It sort of goes against the sort of general consensus that it's got to be an exact copy of a face, otherwise it's not a good portrait. The truth is that if a portrait hasn't got the essence of the individual in the thing, then it's a replication at best, but it's not truly a good portrait, because it doesn't have the essence of that person, of that individual, which is the most important thing. It doesn't have to just look like somebody; it has to feel like somebody, and that if you can't do that, then from my point of view, you're failing at making portraits, because you can't get the real human in it, and to some extent it's just about the replication of the face, and a lot of people get bogged down with that, because if you think about it, if you get bogged down by the replication means execution means technique, and then you're on a rabbit hole of trying to learn techniques, thinking that techniques make you a better artist. They don't. It's not about techniques, but some do. Some believe it is, but it's not about techniques at all. It's about something far more important than techniques. But the nice thing about this, and I know I'm rambling on about other things as well, but the nice thing about this is that from the 3 dots and the accuracy that's required to get things in the right place, the evolutionary approach influences, by accepting that it's this and it's about connection with the subject and all the rest of it. The skills aspect of it are, you develop skills in line with your intention, this intention to capture. You develop skills. So the skills are, you get skills. You get, there's no doubt about it. You will develop skills, but the skills will be in line with this intention to capture the essence of somebody, based on this. This is why it's 3 dots, because I wanted it nice and simple, because otherwise it will become, the main reason for making portraits, because I want to prove how accurate I can be and all the rest of it. So it's not really. It's not something that I wanted to get to a point where, this is definitely how it works every time and all the rest of it. It was really something that I could explain what's happening, so it would give me a better, more simpler explanation to what I'm doing, so that people can understand, and therefore, and hopefully, in some cases, take it on board and do it, and not get bogged down by the mechanics of something. So as I say, I'm kind of trying to simplify the process for my own benefit, really, not for sort of any kind of ground break. I'm not trying to sort of undermine anybody's existing understanding of all this. So it was primarily just for me. But when people ask me how I do it, excuse me, then I needed to have a reasonable explanation, other than just look at me, how clever I am. It's not really about that. It's not even about this thing of do this and you can draw like me. It's not really that either. It is do this and you can draw like you, is what I'm probably more what I'm trying to say, rather than as I said, follow my technique and you'll be able to draw like me. I'm not really bothered about you learning to draw like me. I'm more bothered about you learning to draw like me. Draw like you, and just enjoy the process. So having this simple, explanation for and a method of well, it's not a method, but let's call it that for now, a way of getting things in the right place. I mean, a simple version of that. It just means that it sort of unlocks so many people, unlocks the potential of so many people. So that's what it is. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. I've just to reiterate, this is the foundation of everything in terms of what I'm talking about. Finding those 3 dots on their face, but the truth of this bit is that this is a measure of your visual accuracy. That's all it is. So you put 3 dots in a place where you normally have your reference, and then you work out how accurate you are. How that transposes onto the face is up to you. You can choose any of the points that you think are highly visible or more visible than others. Those can be if you're talking about horizontal and vertical, those can be the primary positions from which you can then make the shapes, and you can do the same thing. You can do the same kind of visual comparison to work out the extremities of that shape, the actual shape itself, from the points that you've decided. And really, it is just about seeing better. It is just about improving your observation. It's not about specifically using 3 dots all the time. You may well, when you see me scribble through the drawings that I do, you don't see me using any dots, but you do see me actually pinpointing where things should be. So that's my way of applying the dots, and it's just a visual thing. So I don't have to put dots on things anymore. It's got to a point where I can see with accuracy, so I can see that the distance of things are right without putting any dots on it. So that's it. That's the how to get things in the right place. I'm going to do one in a minute. I've just said it again, but I'm probably going to do one in a minute anyway, which is going to talk about drawing with shapes and tones, not talking about eyes, not talking about noses, not talking about ears. It's drawing with shapes and tones, which is a much easier way. If you take on the the using 3 dots and finding the anchors. Finding the shapes is the next progression, so I'll talk about that in the next video.